You're listening to Panthers on Tap. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson Karbley. We're just two fans sharing our love for the game in Carolina Panthers football. So join us, crack open a cold one, some bubbly, a little wine, some scotch. We don't care, whatever makes you sleep better at night. Before we dive into the episode, a little self-promotion. Stop what you're doing. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap. Join the discussion on our Facebook group. We have over 2,500 members. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcast. Just search Panthers on Tap. Preseason game one is in the books. The Jets wall up the Panthers at home. A lot of things to clean up before the season. Bryson, how you doing tonight?
Good. I'm glad to get in here and talk about some frustrations that we all experienced this past weekend. There was a lot of maybe overreacting on Twitter, and then there was a lot of, I think, proper reacting, and then a lot of people that kind of wrote it off as nothing. So it's kind of good to get on here and talk to our guest and get your opinion on it, Curtis, because I haven't really talked to you guys about that.
Yeah, we got a guest with us this week. It's been a while. A first-timer, as we like to call it here. You guys know him as Ricky Raines on Twitter or X, whatever the cool kids are calling it these days. He's also part of the Kitty Lit podcast. He writes for Cat Crave. Ricky, it is a pleasure for you coming on tonight.
Man, thanks for having me, guys. I was excited when I got the invitation. I've really only done the one podcast, Kitty Lit. So this is a fun opportunity, and I'm always down to talk ball, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've listened to you from afar in the spaces, and I've liked some of your takes. So it's good to get you on here and let our listeners get a little.
I appreciate the honesty too, that you like some of the takes as opposed to like all of them. You know what I mean? Because some of it is just like pulling out of my ass.
Well, I didn't want to seem like a creep, and I was like following you.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I remember that one thing you said back in May of 23, and it was just great. You know.
But let's get to the game, because there's a lot to unpack here, and we'll start with Bryce Young. Just kind of your guys' initial thoughts on his debut. I know it wasn't many passes. I think it was 7 or 8. But I'll start with you, Ricky. What did you think from Bryce Young from the short stint we saw of him?
I mean, I saw pretty much everything that I was looking to see from Bryce Young. I think his final stat line was 4 of 6 for 21 yards. The very first pass for him, I think, was the most important one and the most fun to kind of go over the film breakdown of it, right? And JT O'Sullivan did a really good job of this with the Quarterback School on Twitter and his YouTube channel. But he takes a snap from the shotgun and he does a full field read from left to right, goes through his progressions in a really quick, timely manner, and he gets to his fourth read within about 3 seconds, which that was his average time of release that he'd had at Alabama getting rid of the ball. So him being able to go through those progressions, his very first snap in the NFL, find Thielen for a really nice completion. He had a couple of other really good reads, I thought, threw from a really nice rhythm within the pocket when he had a pocket, which wasn't very often. I'm sure that we'll talk a little bit about that. But I saw everything that I wanted to see from Bryce, man. And I'm just as confident after seeing that, despite it being 4 of 6 for 21, that I was when I came into it after all my time watching him at camp.
Bryson, what'd you see from Young?
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the few rookie quarterbacks that didn't throw an interception, right? So we saw, like Ricky said, the processing was the biggest thing that I took away. Other than his footwork, I thought his footwork was exceptional in the short time that we saw him. And when a quarterback has that footwork that isn't choppy and doesn't step on top of his own feet. I mean, starting from the bottom up is the saying, and he's got the picture perfect footwork that's what you coach players, any quarterback coming up throughout the ranks on how to do it. So I was really excited for the short amount of time that we did see Bryce Young dealing with the lack of a clear pocket, a clean pocket. I mean, he showed the ability to stay in the pocket and take the hit when he knew it was coming, and continue to go through his reads and find the right guy for the 6 passes that he had. So I hope we get to see a little bit more of him in week 2, maybe, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reiterating what you guys mentioned. I love the JT O'Sullivan stuff. If you guys not have checked out the QB School, it's worth your time on YouTube. But he took away and kind of broke down those plays and the processing, what you saw at Alabama, you saw in that game for the brief, 6 or 7 plays he had throwing the ball. So that was good to see. he spreaded it out too. I mean, he was hitting Chark, he hit Thielen, he went after LaVisca. So yeah, I think that's what you're going to kind of get from this offense. Again, we all know it was everyone wants to call it quote unquote the vanilla play calling for preseason, but I thought you could, we got a good mix of and a kind of glimpse into what we're going to expect out of Bryce Young moving forward. And speaking of that, let's talk about the play calling, and then we'll get in the offensive line here. What were you guys upset at that? I know people are freaking out, and they want to see the chunk plays. They want to see what they saw in training camp. I don't mind it. I mean, if Frank wants to hide his offensive playbook for the regular season, majority of the coaches do it. I don't have an issue with it at all. I mean, I get it. We want to see the 50-yard pass to Shark, but why show your cards right now?
Yeah, I would like to see more than 0 points on the board. So maybe just throw in a nice play here and there. But I get the sentiment of not wanting, a new coaching staff with a new quarterback, not wanting to show their hand prior to the season. I understand that, but throwing a play or two in there is, it's not going to give away your whole entire scheme. And I think that's what they're going to do week 2. It sounds like is kind of open it up just a little bit more to get the players more involved.
Yeah, I think that's exactly correct. And I do think that if he'd have gotten a couple extra seconds on a couple of those plays, there were some routes on the top and the bottom of the field that had he had a little bit of extra time to go through his progressions, he might have taken a chance. I know JT O'Sullivan did a good job of that breakdown of the back shoulder miscommunication that he had with DJ Chark because that defender was right there on his hip. If he'd have had an extra second to let that develop, Chark ended up getting that step on that route. Maybe he does throw it 30 yards downfield. He made the right read on that because of the coverage, but he had to throw it with a little bit more anticipation. So, yeah, game 2, I expect a tiny bit more of an open up there and maybe a couple of new wrinkles. I still think you're going to get the super duper vanilla game plan, and I'm completely cool with that. Like, we don't amass the wins and losses in the preseason, right? That happens in the regular season, and then hopefully a postseason record. So I'm totally cool with it, man.
All right, let's talk about. Sorry, I'm trying to get this shit set up. let's talk about the offensive line because that's everyone is freaking out about that right now.
Is that a topic of conversation? I haven't heard anything about that.
Oh yes,
Oh, okay.
for sure. But here we go. Here are the PFF grades for the O line. I get it. Got to take these with a grain of salt. But these are what they were across the board. Obviously, Icky gave up a couple sacks, some pressures. Again, I fel like PFF is you like it when you can bend the numbers the way you want it to be, and then you hate it when the numbers are ugly. So it's really hard to read sometimes because I feel like I know Bryson and I talked about this a lot last year. There were weeks we didn't agree with the PFF grades whatsoever, and we thought guys played better than they did or worse than what they were given. But just across the board, obviously, the right guard position is of concern. Cade Mays struggled. Really, a lot of the offensive linemen did. But just kind of give me your guys' thoughts on the offensive line of whole on Saturday. Bryce Young took way too many shots. So,
yeah, the first play of the game, he took that massive shot from Solomon Thomas. I mean, I was nervous. Let's just say that I was nervous when he was out there. Ike Ekwonu with the 15 pass block grade. I think that's the lowest I've ever seen. You could probably put us out there and we could get a 15 PFF grade at left tackle. But it is preseason, like everybody says. Let's not throw in the towel for the season already. But it was concerning, and I think that they were concerned themselves. I mean, having the meeting immediately after, separate from the team, I think speaks volumes to how they felt about that performance and that they were better because this was a position group that everybody felt was a strength going into the season based off of the end of last season. And then they come out and get thoroughly embarrassed preseason week 1 to start the year. So right guard is a position of I guess need right now. And it sounds like some reports today that Zavala is back practicing and Chandler Zavala, that is, and that he may fill into that spot. But Cade Mays was somebody that we were all hoping was going to take that next step and and be the guy that fills in that right guard role while Corbett's out. But it seems like he's struggling and hasn't taken that step. So maybe Zavala comes in and takes it, or a guy like Nash Jensen, who undrafted that we talked about last week, that he may make the roster and be the guy that fills in.
Yeah, Ricky, are we hitting the panic button yet? You see on Twitter, I saw today there was a poll. Should Icky move to left guard and Christensen slide to left tackle? Like,
Oh, man.
what the hell's going on here with some of these people on Twitter?
Look, that one, there's so much fan ideas on Twitter, right? And I love all of them because it's enthusiasm. That one is one that I had to at least just like put my nose in a little bit, because Icky, what he presents from his physical profile and just his abilities, he is the most total package dynamic player that we could have on that offensive line. So the conversation of sliding him in to protect him from his deficiencies is just kind of a little bit of a wild thing for me. When you look at it in last year's class, it was Charles Cross or Icky, right, as the top offensive tackle prospects in that class. Charles Cross was thought as a surefire pass protector, couldn't run block for shit, to put it politely, is the thought of it, because he came out of the Mike Leach system. You look at their pass pro efficiency rate on the big opportunities that they had, because each of them had over, I believe it was 400 pass pro opportunities in 2022, and they had almost identical efficacy rates. So I think that it's recency bias where we're looking at 3-series preseason game and ready to sound the alarm. This is a guy that went almost 10 consecutive weeks in the regular season as a rookie in the NFL without allowing a sack. He had multiple games where he had over 58 pass pro opportunities, and he had 0 sacks in those games. I just think that we are jumping on that a little bit too early. I think that when you look at Icky, he, even coming out of college, it was said that he had a tendency to overset. He's got to figure out the fundamentals there, and that's what Campen talked about in that meeting, or at least that's what he said that he briefly touched on. He didn't give any kind of details today, which I appreciate that he kept that close to the vest too. I just think that we've got to let them figure this out for a second. It was 3 series. I think that they got hit in the mouth with more energy than they anticipated coming out of the New York Jets, and it was just a stunner. I would expect him to come out against the Giants and show exactly why we were so excited about him coming into this season. Right guard, that's a totally valid situation right there. Cade Mays has a ton of versatility. I don't know that he's a natural fit at right guard. I think that he is better served as a swing tackle, even a backup left guard. I think that Zavala, they would love for him to seize that opportunity. I think Justin McCray is another option there, because I don't really think they want to go in with that undrafted free agent, Nash Jensen. They like him. He's nasty. I just don't think that there is this great, warm and fuzzy feeling about throwing an undrafted free agent in the starting lineup week 1.
Yeah, I mean, to sum that all up, fans need just to chill the fuck out.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
That's what needs to happen. Like,
everybody pour an IPA or a lager or whatever it is that you drink, a bourbon. Honestly, for some of you, definitely a bourbon. Like, go harder early and just get that relaxation, man.
Well, one guy we do need to throw under the bus, and this guy needs to get off this team and should never be protecting Bryce Young, and that's Michael Jordan, man.
Please.
I mean, that guy almost ended Joe Burrow's career pretty damn early on.
Yeah.
Getting hit with the injury in the ACL, and then he comes here and he's not fit for that guard position. I know we've had Kevin Avery on the show many times. He loved him some Michael Jordan. So I'm kind of throwing some shade at Kevin here, but get that guy off this team. He's terrible.
And hey, Kev is probably one of the most knowledgeable fans, especially when it comes to the trenches. Like, I will listen to anything that Kev says when it comes to the offensive and defensive line. When he's in those spaces and he starts speaking, I shut the hell up and I listen. That is a smart, knowledgeable dude about this stuff. I will agree with you 1,000,000%. I want Michael Jordan the furthest away that he could possibly be from Bryce Young on Sundays. I don't care what has to happen. I don't care if, like, we all have to get a GoFundMe going where we pay somebody off to just take him out somewhere, in California and let him hang out and live a good life. Just get away from Bryce Young, please. I just can't deal with it, man.
And one other guy, while we're on the topic, Cameron Irving, he can go with Michael Jordan too. Get him out of here.
At least Cam is thought of as a really good locker room guy, though, and he has that swing tackle ability where if you get jammed up, you're going to be able to put him on the outside, at least for a few, drives if you have to. Michael Jordan, man, I just don't know how much longer Charlotte is going to try to make anything Michael Jordan related happen. I think we've just got to move on to this next chapter,
Fair enough.
Well, let me pose this question because we were kind of talking about it. Who would you guys like to see start at that right guard position? It sounds like after this week, they're hopefully going to nail something down. Bryson, I'll start with you. Do you think it's going to be Zavala? Who do you want? Jensen? Who are you thinking?
I'm going to have to go with Austin Corbett on this one. It did sound like there were some possibilities that, he may not go on the pup list to start the regular season. So hopefully he's a little bit ahead of schedule in regards to his recovery. But I think the fit that everybody wants to see there in the meantime is Zavala. I mean, he was drafted high, one of the higher rated prospects at guard coming into the draft. And, we talked about him all throughout the off season and up until the draft. And we were happy to see him come to Carolina. He's got the history with Iquanu, who he wouldn't be beside, but he does have that experience with him. And Zavala, from all reports today, seemed like he was playing well. So as long as he's healthy and meshes well with the offensive line, and he has that natural chemistry in there beside Bozeman and Moten, then I think Zavala would be the guy.
What about you, Ricky?
Yeah, so my only hesitation is that I think that Zavala is a more natural left guard, like you just alluded to, talking about him playing next to Icky. And I think that the original plan, and this is just a total presumption, right, is that drafting him, you let him kind of get up to speed in the NFL game. And if he can push Brady throughout the early parts of the regular season, maybe he takes over on that left guard spot, because I know they want a more physical position right there. At right guard, though, there's interest for me of him getting that position. If he can prove that he won it and he gets those reps at right guard, then I think that does open up the door for, if Brady struggles, and we've seen Zavala in NFL action, maybe that's an easier transition to say, hey, look, we think our best starting five includes Zavala one way or another. So we're going to shift him over to that left side. Corbett comes back on the right. And then maybe you do have that offensive line that they were intending on having with a little bit of extra reps for Zavala. My only hesitation is, again, 0 game experience. So I could totally see Cade Mays also just getting that job by de facto. So I think it's between Cade Mays and Zavala.
Yeah, I'd like Zavala to run away with it. We'll see what happens, obviously, this weekend, and I think they're both going to get some good opportunities there. But we'll see. I mean, I know it's been echoed, early on that they really wanted to see Zavala aside of Icky. And I mean, I think that is probably the plan for the long term. But at this point, I think when push comes to shove, you're going to need a guy to fill in. And if Cade Mays ain't cutting it, it might be time to roll the dice with a rookie and see what he's got. It's getting away from the offensive line now a little bit. Any other observations you guys saw in that game? And I guess I'll start here a little bit. I was watching the game back over because we were away this weekend. I thought Grugier Hill all but locked up a spot on that roster. The guy is a stud. He played really well on special teams. He also had a couple plays. He just was flying all over the field on defense. So I thought that was good to see. And he showed up all camp. He's had 4 interceptions, I think, in training camp so far. It sounded like this guy was just going to be like a special teams player, some depth for this linebacker room. But I feel like they need to find ways to get him on the field, because I feel like he's more than a special teams guy, and he's just got a knack for the ball. Another guy I wanted to mention too is Derek Wright. I thought he played well. He had a couple good catches. He was one that me and Bryson had talked about a couple of weeks ago. Just pulling for the guy. I feel like he's had a good connection with Bryce Young early in training camp as well. But those were probably the 2 guys that stuck out to me. Any thoughts for Bryson or Ricky on some of the guys that stuck out, some positives in this game, I guess?
Yeah, I'll go with a guy I've given a lot of shit over the years was Dante Jackson. I think he was the highest graded defensive player in the game, Pro Football Focus wise. Continuing on off of those stats, he had a great game. We all saw the pass breakup on was it Hardman, Mecole Hardman that he had,
Yeah.
where he kind of got behind him, then caught back up, and then made a play on the ball. So I thought that was great to see. He looks like he's back to form before he tore his ACL. So he was great. And then C.J. Henderson as well had a really good game. And it sounds like that cornerback room is taking strides, and I just hope that they can stay healthy. And I think that it's going to be a pretty good group if so.
Yeah, I totally agree with the players that you guys just named. Kamu Grugier-Hill has been outstanding. I mean, that dude has flashed since the moment that he stepped on the training field, and it carried straight over into game action. You love to see that. I think that it's worth shining a little bit of praise on DJ Johnson, because DJ Johnson has gotten a really short end of the stick as far as fans having a problem with the draft pick initially, and then what we've seen out of small sample sizes in camp and drills. He showed exactly why they drafted him. His power and his ability to set that edge and his run defense was really nice. If he can show consistently his ability to do that and to provide that value to the team, it really does put a fire under YGM, which I think he kind of needs, because there are other players on this roster, such as Iku Leota, Kobe Jones, and Amari Barno, who all three looked nice on Saturday as well. Iku is all over the place. You talk about Kamu. Iku played as many special team snaps as he could and played a bunch of defense with second and third units. And he looked good, man. He looked like he belonged. But if DJ Johnson can continually put those things on the field and in play, then I do think maybe you can open up some of those roster spots for some of these young guys that have flashed the pass rushing ability that we're going to be desperate for if this Marquise Haynes injury continues on. I also really liked Eric Rowe, what he showed out there. I thought that he looked like a really nice addition. He had that physical brand of football that he's now known for after.
Yeah, he had a nice ass hit.
He did, man. He had a couple of them, you know? And you just think, if he has to step in, let's say for Jeremy Chin in that big nickel or that star role in Evero's defense, you feel pretty good about that, right? And not only do you feel good about the prospects of him having to step in and play that, you feel good about Jeremy Chin learning from a guy who's done it. So there's just a couple of things there that I really enjoyed. I did like Marquand McCall too. Marquand looks like he's the real deal at that nose tackle position. I'm very happy for him on that. So there was multiple reasons to feel good about it if you just kind of stop watching the offensive line. You know?
I thought Amari Barno did well in that game as well. He had a sack. Yeah. He was putting some pressure on. So I'm curious to see what he does with the rest of these preseason reps. One guy we haven't really talked about, and let's touch on him here a little bit, and then we'll get into some other things. Matt Corral, what was our thoughts on him? This was kind of his shining moment. We get it. It's a vanilla type offense. They're not calling these splash plays. But for him to come out, you know, he didn't have a lot of protection, but there really wasn't much execution on his part. So let's talk about Corral a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I tried not to watch the second half of the game. I thought Corral was – I didn't really have an opinion on Corral's performance. I thought that he did the most he could with what he had out there at the time. This is technically his rookie season. His first closest to full game that he's played in the NFL. And like you mentioned, Curtis, he didn't have a whole lot of protection. But I feel like at times he did make quick and proper reads, and at times he stood in the pocket too long, got the ball stripped, and I mean, he just looked like he was learning out there and getting his feet wet, really in real game time play that he hasn't had up to this point. So I'm not ready to write him off, or I'm not ready to say he's not going to be a good backup or even a potential starter in this league at some point. But I think just the more game reps that he gets, the better that he will get. A performance probably not the best or that he's probably proud of, but I think that it was good for him to get out there and like I said, get some game action.
Ricky, what'd you think of Corral?
I think I came away a little bit less even keel or optimistic as Bryson. And I love the optimism though. Like that is really nice to hear, especially when I've been in my own head going the opposite way with Corral. My issues that I had with him is, you're exactly right. He didn't have a ton of protection. But on the plays where he did have opportunities because of the protection, he made life more difficult on himself. He even acknowledged it, that his eyes were really his problem in this game. It wasn't his foot that he's recovered from. His foot felt fine. His physical form felt fine, but that his eyes were his problem. He was slow in reacting, and he held the ball for quite some time. Multiple instances he had opportunities, and there was even a play where he completed the pass. It was the one where he almost went over the line of scrimmage, where they initially did call it an illegal forward pass, reviewed it, and his whole body wasn't over. He could have thrown that 2 seconds prior. The route was still right there open, and the receiver was already almost at a dead stop in his position. That's the game being sped up in his head. That's what you saw from Zach Wilson. That's what you see a lot with like Baker Mayfield and stuff like that. So I do have a little bit of a concern with that, and I don't know that I feel as rosy about his outlook. He's still young. He's got a really live arm. You could see that, right? He's got some zip on it. He can throw it into tight windows. I think the problem is I don't know that he's going to see those windows when they're available. And if they're tight, I just think that's a recipe for interceptions over the middle of the field when he tries to use that arm to make up for the fact that he's late on his reads.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get anything trade-off or wise just based off of that one performance. I thought he settled in though once there wasn't much pressure. He had a couple of good throws in there. I'm like, all right, okay, I can kind of see this. And then, the pressure came again, and he's missing throws. So
you're right though. He did show his physical ability, right? Like there were some throws. I don't want to make it sound like he was all awful. I don't think that's an accurate portrayal of his game either. He made some really nice throws, man. Like he made some things that made you say, I can see why he was drafted in the 3rd round. Mm-hmm. But he also made those decisions that make it more reasonable why he was drafted in the 3rd round as opposed to the first 2.
Yeah, the game just looked too big for him at the moment. I mean,
right.
I could see that, and I think the pressure obviously didn't help him. Another guy I wanted to quickly mention is Jamie Robinson. The play, I mean, that's the play you play in the the film room, and everyone's giving you shit for. I mean, he got spun out. That Madden, pressed the B button spin, and then he gave up on the play. He didn't even go after the guy. It was pretty pitiful performance for a guy who's, there's no 144 better than me type attitude. And then to come out and show that on Saturday was kind of disappointing, to say the least. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he's not had a great camp, and the performance, I guess, Saturday wasn't great either. But again, he's learning. 5th round pick. He was picked in the 5th round for a reason, and I think he's getting his feet wet. So I do think he's going to eventually be good. His specialty is playing up at the line of scrimmage, stopping the run, hitting, within 5-10 yards. I mean, that's what he specializes in, and I think that he's still learning a lot of game speed in the NFL. It's a lot different than in the ACC. Unfortunately, my ACC is not in the best of positions, especially Florida State. So, I think he's still learning, and definitely was a performance I was hoping to see a little bit better from, at least.
Yeah, I hope it's clear before Ricky, you jump in. Like we're not like closing the book on these guys. We're just pulling out just criticism from this game, and I'm hoping he has a bounce back game this week. But go ahead.
No, you're exactly right though, because that is so that's what the coaches are doing, right? They're evaluating all of this stuff on an individual basis. They're looking at the one-on-one reps. They're looking at what did these individual players do when they were faced with situations. And unfortunately for Jamie, the number one situation that's going to stick in everybody's mind was that exact play. And that play, as bad as it is from getting burned on that spin move, which, again, I'm going to reiterate, if I tried to do a spin move of any kind, not just like on the NFL field against pro athletes, I would shatter every ligament in my lower half. So I'm not trying to say that like he got beat by a bad move, but from an NFL standard, that spin move didn't look like the most lethal one that I've seen. And he got fooled pretty bad, which probably leans to the fact that he was out of position on that to begin with. He was probably overplaying that angle. But the problem that I have with that play was giving up on it. You just can't stop. Like if your thing is that you're a dog and that there's not 144 better than you, where's the motor to match that? Because if you have that attitude of proving somebody wrong with a chip on your shoulder, you got to have the game that backs that up. And giving up on a play doesn't exactly read that way. So I hope the same thing that you just said, Curtis. I hope that he has a major bounce back performance in New York. And I think that it's entirely possible because he is so self-aware and has that chip on his shoulder.
Real quick, let's talk. We're bouncing back and forth between offense and defense here, but it just popped in my head. Mingo, what were your guys' thoughts? It sounds like, I mean, he's getting a lot of playing time. I know TMJ's now dealing with a back injury as well, but I mean, this guy has really slid into, that starter role very early on. And it's played out well for, the wideouts coming out of his college. So just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on him. He came out with the starters to start in that Jets game. TMJ's dealing with an injury. Just thoughts on Mingo and his connection with Bryce Young. Bryson?
Yeah, I liked what I saw from Mingo, especially in the camp. Well, the joint practice leading up to the game really was his coming out party, and I know there's been some rumblings. I think on Twitter, Charles Johnson was like, Mingo's wide receiver one. It's just a matter of time, like on the depth chart wise. So yeah, I think Mingo's coming into his own and really developing that chemistry with Bryce Young that I think they hoped that he would when they drafted him, and I think we've all heard the reports that Bryce liked Mingo when he was coming out and kind of gave the stamp of approval on the draft pick. So to hear that they are building that chemistry and showing it at the same time is promising.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good way of putting it, that his coming out party was that joint practice with the Jets. It was the first opportunity to see this team against a live opponent, and Bryce seemed to have a confidence level in Jonathan Mingo to create separation and win one-on-ones. Because once again, in those joint practices, it wasn't nearly as vanilla, I don't think, as far as the concepts that they were calling. They were calling a little bit of different looks and packages and formations, but there was still the onus on that one individual player is going to have to make a play to get wide open, because we're not going to use our schematic advantages to do that for him. And Mingo was looked at often on that. And that's because he has the best physical ability of anybody on this receiving room. That doesn't mean, though, that these other guys don't have a great purpose and a great role on the offense. DJ Chark, we know exactly what he's going to do, right? And he's done it efficiently throughout camp, and he's been healthy. That's the biggest thing with him that everyone was concerned about. With TMJ nursing the injury, I think that it offers a significant opportunity for Jonathan Mingo to seize. Him being listed as the starter on the initial or the unofficial 53 depth chart, that was important, but it was a little bit more ceremonial to me. Just kind of like they had Chark and Marshall as the 2X. They had Thielen lined up as the Z. Mingo kind of was that big slot, and by de facto, right? There was nobody else to really fill that starting position there. I think now, though, that there is reason to believe he's 100% earning that, and that's not going to be ceremonial. That's going to be a going forward. This is one of our top 2 or 3 options in this offense is Jonathan Mingo. They start using him in all the versatile ways that we know they're going to use in this offensive system. It's going to be really fun to see his progression throughout the year. And I think he's further ahead than I anticipated him being, man. Like, his release game and his routes are a lot cleaner than I thought they were when he came out of college. He dominated with his physical ability in college. Right now, he's showing some technical prowess, and it's pretty impressive, man.
All right, let's get into some NFC South talk right now. We're going to kind of dive into the depth charts, kind of look at them all across the board. Saints looked pretty good over the weekend. Again, it's preseason, but they played well against the Chiefs. But let's start. We're going to kind of go position by position, try to keep this as quick as possible, give our takes on this. But this is kind of a primer for the start of the season. Carolina opens with Atlanta and then goes and plays the Saints on Monday night. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we're just going to break it down by position and just look at these teams across the board here. And here we go. So this is obviously we know what the QBs are. Bucks, I didn't know what to do because I don't know who's starting. Yeah. I mean, is it Baker or Kyle? So I had to put both of them in there, but these are just the starters. Well, let's talk about it. Who do you think's who's the top dog in this division when it comes to QB at this moment? And, where do you guys see this, the division with QBs ranking right here? Bryson, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I'm trying to be as non-biased as possible throughout this process. So I just want to put that out there first. I'm trying to look at this through a lens of not a Panthers fan. So I think basing off of the preseason week 1, I would say Derek Carr probably looked the best quarterback-wise, which is it's not surprising. He's a veteran in this league who's had successful seasons, and he does have that experience. So I'd say Derek Carr looked the best to start the year so far. But in my opinion, who would you rather have? Obviously, it's Bryce Young. and his outlook for his career at this point. So I think week one, I would say it's not going to shock a lot of people if Derek Carr has a better game, just based off of the veteran experience that he has. But I definitely think the worst situation is the Bucs. We know Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. I mean, I think he was a QB at Florida. I don't really know much about his career up to this point. I think he's been back up for a while. And then Desmond Ridder, we've all seen, we haven't seen the throws at camp. They've been trying to hide him, and he didn't play in the preseason. So
show me who threw that.
So I right now, I think it's fair to rank Derek Carr as 1, then Bryce Young as 2. But that's going to change very quickly, in my opinion, once the season starts.
Ricky, what do you think of Desmond Ridder? I've seen both. I've seen people go both ways on him. I know Carolina, there's obviously a lot of hate, but what do you think of Ridder?
I don't much, first of all. But second, I guess if I had to think about Desmond Ridder, I would say that I think that he's a capable game manager, and I mean that in kind of the not endearing term, right? Like, you could call Kirk Cousins a game manager to an extent, but I would say that in like the nicest way possible, because he can also win you a game technically. Desmond Ridder, I don't think has that capability right now. From a physical tool standpoint, the guy is a mobile quarterback. We saw that at Cincinnati, right? He took his team to BCS games. He has a little bit of grit to him, but I don't see anything that stands out that would make him anything better than a very average starter to possibly a top-tier backup in the NFL. I think that Bryson's completely correct on the Derek Carr at number 1, right? And my co-host of Kitty Lit will love hearing this because he ridicules me for saying this, but Derek Carr has to be the de facto number 1 right now. Bryce Young hasn't taken a snap in the NFL in a meaningful game. If you put a guy who hasn't taken a NFL snap over a guy like Derek Carr, who has a long career in the NFL, and not a bad one, not a great one, I'm not like going to tell everyone to be scared of him, but he's accomplished some things, and he goes into an offense that has some weapons. So it's Derek Carr by de facto right now. Desmond Ridder, look, he plays football. Baker Mayfield is a guy that people call a quarterback. Kyle Trask has a really big fan, and if you ask her, his mom will tell you that like he's a good player. But the end of the day, it's going to be Bryce Young when all of this shakes itself out. And maybe I'm a homer on that, maybe I'm biased, or maybe I'm just right. You're
right.
Thank you.
No, I mean, I would.
So are you?
I would agree with you guys. I think Derek Carr, I think just by default, it has to be him with no game reps from Bryce. And Ricky kind of talked about that. I'm going to go Bryce Young second without a doubt. What we're seeing, the limited stuff we're seeing out of Falcons, he's the one who's throwing, all the short passes and the picks, and they're just not showing it. And we know what Baker's about. The guy, I mean, how many tip balls he had last year with Carolina. I was a Baker bro. I wanted him here. I wanted them to trade for him. He just didn't pan out. And the rest is history. I think they're the team going up to get, a Caleb Williams or Bryson's guy at UNC. So, yeah, I mean, I think Carolina's in a good spot, and I think that talk to me about that list at the end of the season. You might see Bryce Young at the top there. So,
yep.
It should be good. But let's go to the next position group here if I can pull it up. I got so many damn tabs open right now that I'm really trying to do this quickly, but it's just so not happening.
We sound so old.
Oh man, but yeah, let's go to the running backs list. Here we go. There we go. We got her. All right, so
it's a good division for running backs. I'll tell you that.
It really is.
Yeah.
Bryson, why don't we start with you, and I'll pull this up.
Yeah.
Running backs, how are you ranking them?
Yeah, I really like the Saints group, obviously with Jamal Williams, who I think he led the league in rushing touchdowns last season, and Kamara, who's going to be suspended, but we know his game. And then Keandre Miller, Ricky, I think is a very good running back as well. So very good group in New Orleans. And then obviously with the Falcons, Bijan Robinson, their top pick this year, Tyler Algier, who had a really good season last year. and then Cordell Patterson, who's aging but is still a threat to run the ball. The worst group, again, the Buccaneers. Rachaad White is actually a good player. I do like him a lot. I'm going to be drafting him in a fantasy because I think he's going to be the workhorse down there. I don't know how.
That.
Yeah, I don't know how well he's going to perform, but I do think he has a solid ability to run the ball and catch the ball out of the backfield. And then the group in Carolina, of course, Miles Sanders, Raheem Blackshear at 2, then Chuba Hubbard at 3. That's how I rank it. I'm a known Chuba hater, but he did have a good season last year to end the year. But I do like Raheem Blackshear a lot, and I think that he will, even from reports today coming out of camp, Raheem Blackshear had a couple good runs. He's kind of coming into his own and making a name for himself. So ranking them in an order, and of course Miles Sanders had 1,300 yards last season. I mean, he was behind the best offensive line in the NFL, but he obviously has that ability. I would probably put the Saints at 1, then Falcons at 2, Panthers at 3, Bucks at 4.
Ricky, how would you rank them?
Yeah, I don't think that's bad. The Alvin Kamara suspension, what is it? 4 games? Is that what he's
3
out?
games.
3 games. Okay, so
Yeah.
he's out the first 3 games. Kendre Miller just came down with a slight injury, right? I believe that
Yep.
he got a little bit banged up in the preseason game. Jamal Williams has proven that he can shoulder a load for a matter of weeks, and he's been efficient in that. The Saints have a pretty solid offensive line. I believe that they will probably run the ball more than they'll throw it because of the fact that they want to kind of limit the exposure on Derek Carr learning these new receivers. So I like them as the top dog in that grouping because when Kamara comes back, I think Kamara is the best of those running backs there. Again, the thing with Bijan is he hasn't played a snap, right? He should be really good. He's got all of the ability in the world. He's got all the talent. I don't really care for the fact that their room just seems kind of confused. I don't know that Tyler Algier is going to see enough time to make the impact he had last year. So then he kind of becomes this afterthought because he's not a dynamic player. He's more of those with repetition and with exposure. He's going to kind of beat you eventually with some of his versatility, catching out of the backfield. Cordell does it too. Now Bijan does it. So too crowded for me. I don't really care about Tampa Bay's Rachaad White. I think you're right. He's going to get fed the ball. I don't know that necessarily
have
means
8 in a box,
anything
though.
good with it. Right. Exactly. You're not going to scare anybody with your passing game. Now, you do have to kind of stay a little bit honest with Godwin and Mike Evans, which I'm assuming is going to be up next. But I just don't really worry about that, Bucks. The Panthers relies on the health of Miles Sanders, and he's coming into it with his groin injury, which seems a little bit more significant than what they alluded to at the beginning of it. Still don't feel overly concerned. I think that they're just not interested in playing him in the preseason. Why should you? We know what he can do. Chuba Hubbard, I'm not a hater on. I like the way that he's looked in camp. I like the 25 to 30 pounds that he's added to his frame, and he hasn't lost a bit of the explosiveness with that added weight. So I really like that. And I am a Raheem Blackshear truther. I have singled him out in articles. I've talked about him on the podcast. I've tweeted about him. It's not like creepy or anything. I just really like him, and I think that he's a quality ball player that can fit that Nyheim Hines role in the Frank Reich offense. And so I think that he's going to carve out a nice little role, especially if we struggle to find a great slot receiver. I know that right now the conversation's on Shy. Is he going to do it or not? I think that Raheem will have a really nice role there as a pass catcher. So I would go Saints, Panthers, Falcons, Bucks.
So you're taking the Panthers over the Falcons, all right?
I am, yeah.
Fair enough.
I also think that's because of the offense. Like, I think that the Falcons offense isn't going to scare anybody either. Until Desmond Ridder proves that he can throw the football to a guy that's wearing a Falcons jersey, I'm not really worried about it. You know? So
That's fair.
I've got to see it happen before I feel any fear about that.
To make this quick, I would do Saints 1.1, Falcons 1.2. I agree with Ricky. I think Sanders' health is going to play a pivotal role for Carolina. So I put them at 3. Before the injury, the growing injury with Sanders, I mean, I'd be drafting this guy in fantasy. I think he's going to have a big year. He's supposed to get a ton of more catches, kind of the Deuce Staley days in Philly. So I think if you're in a PPR league, he's one to grab. But the injury is somewhat concerning, and it sounds like they're just holding him out for preseason, but that's just something to monitor. And then I feel like Bucks are going to be last in majority of these categories. Put them at 4 and call it a day. Let's move on, and I think we're just going to do the offense today, and then we can do defense next week.
Perfect.
That way we can kind of rip through these a little bit.
That was a nice pivot, Curtis.
So let's move to the tight end spot here. I lied. We're going to do wide receivers. Wide receivers it is. Just for my shitty maneuvering of this site, that's what we're going to go with. So bear with me here. But let's start with wide receivers. And I'm going to start this time, and then we'll go to Ricky and then Bryson. Man, again, I would probably go with the Saints at 1. I really like Chris Olave. I think Michael Thomas is good when he's healthy, the slant man. I like Traquan Smith. I do like A.T. Perry. We talked a lot about him in our mock draft right before the draft in April. We all were pretty high on him, and he had a nice catch, a nice touchdown against the Chiefs on Saturday. I think they're pretty deep there, barring Thomas stays healthy. I would go Carolina. No, I shouldn't do that. I'm just looking at this for the first time, but I would probably maybe go. Man, I would probably go Bucks too, actually. Mike Evans, I like a lot. I think Chris Godwin is good. And I think Mike Evans is that true number 1 wide receiver. And I don't think Carolina has that yet. So I'm going to go with the Bucks at 2. Carolina 3, just based off of them not having those two. I feel like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are another level. But I do think Carolina has a lot of depth. So that's where I'm kind of iffy on that. And then I'm going to go with the Falcons at 4. I just don't think they're deep. I like Drake London, but some of the other guys I've never even heard of. So that's how I would rank them. Ricky?
Yeah, I'll go Saints 1. I like that's also dependent on Michael Thomas' health. I think that's an obvious caveat. I love Chris Olave. I think that he's going to work well with Derek Carr as well. I really like A.T. Perry. I think that's another good call by you. I think that he was targeted a lot in that preseason game, and I don't think that was a fluke. I think that he has a skill set that the other guys on that roster don't have. You know, the really interesting player on that too is James Washington. He's just a completely forgotten about player, but he was an absolute stud at Oklahoma State, and they had big plans for him in Dallas until he was injured, right? Or in Pittsburgh and then in Dallas. He has shown flashes of ability that, let's say Michael Thomas comes up with an injury and he gets a couple extra opportunities. Interesting to watch. I would probably go the Panthers too, and it's strictly out of depth because I think that the Buccaneers are very top heavy. I love their top 2 receivers. I don't care about any of the other ones. I was a Trey Palmer fan coming out of Nebraska this year in the draft process. I think that he's got some ability, but he's a rookie, really hard to tell. I like the depth of Carolina. I think that we're going to use such schematic advantages with these guys and that they were put on this team for purposes. So I like the idea of that receiving core. Then I go Tampa, and then I'll go Atlanta at 5. I'll skip the 4 and just give them 5.
Bryson. And that is a valid point about the depth too. And examining it, I'm like, shit, maybe I should slot them
tough,
at 2.
man,
I'm going to get shit. I'm going to get
you're
shit.
Right.
For,
you're right,
whatever.
Though, man. I think that Tampa's got the 2 like top heavy ones, right? Mike Evans is probably the best of anyone proven. Chris Godwin's a great slot guy. But depth wise, man, Carolina's got some scary depth there.
Bryson?
Yeah, I get flamed online when I say that it's the deepest wide receiver room that the Panthers have had in years. But yeah, you know, I want to be different. So I'm gonna go with the Bucks at 1. Just kind of what are the reasons you guys have said, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think that if either of them were on any other team, they would be the best receiver on that team. Maybe only with the Saints with Chris Olave being better. But I think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are 2 wide receiver 1s, and they just do so much for that offense. I mean, they've terrorized us for years. So just out of respect, I'm going to give them the 1. Then 2, I'll go Saints. Chris Olave, like you guys mentioned, a lot of it's going to be dependent on if Michael Thomas stays healthy, which he hasn't been for like a decade, it feels like. So, I do like Rashid Shaheed a lot as well. He's their speed, like They had that Deontay Harris player kind of build that they always find undrafted or in the 7th round. Then, of course, A.T. Perry that you guys have mentioned. And then moving to Carolina at 3 with they do have the depth that we've talked about. I do think Mingo is going to separate himself. And I'm a TMJ truther as well. Unfortunately, he's got that injury, and we really don't know how serious it is at this point. But I do think TMJ has a lot of potential to separate as well. I think that those two guys could be the best 2 receivers on the team by the end of the season. And then, of course, Chark has shown that connection with Bryce Young as well. So, And then, of course, with the Falcons there. Now, don't sleep on Matt Collins, UNC guy. He's actually shown some ability in camp to get a jump ball. He's a bit of a bully wide receiver, so he's not a terrible wide receiver 2. And Drake London's not a terrible wide receiver 1. It's just that after those 2 guys, is that Scotty Miller? Is that the
that's Scotty Miller, the former Buccaneers Scotty Miller.
The Bucs.
Yeah. And then Kadarrell Hodge. Who the hell is Penny Halton? Josh Ollie. Like, I've never heard of those guys. That could be my mailman for all I know. Like
Matt Collins. Matt Collins is the barefoot bandit, right? That's the dude that runs around barefoot all the time. Yeah. But see, isn't it tough though when you have to caveat all that by saying he's not a terrible 2? He's not a terrible 1. Like, you can't even just say that they're good 2s or they're good 1s. That's a tough one, man.
It is. But hey, like I said when I started, man, I'm trying to be unbiased. Just trying.
I love it. Yeah. I like that.
But
I feel like Shaheed and Smith for the Saints are very underrated too. I feel like they always are making plays. Like, they just come out of nowhere and make plays.
I feel like they're very similar players too.
They are, definitely. That's a deep group that they have in New Orleans. I mean, you got A.T. Perry at the 5. That's a deep group.
And Michael Thomas is a wild card because if he's healthy and he's the Mike Thomas from the past, I mean, you talk about being the best receiver in the division. He's got an argument to it,
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's just, man, that guy he can't stay out.
Right.
He can't stay.
I'm not betting on that. Yep.
All right, let's go to the next group here. And this is the tight end group. And we'll try to make this a little bit quicker. Just kind of rank them 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, I'll start just for my sanity's sake with these graphics. I will go with the Falcons at 1, and I didn't even share my screen, so I apologize. Give me 1 second here. We'll figure this out by the next show.
Falcons at 1. That's interesting, man. That means that you like Kyle Pitts more than his own damn head coach likes him.
Yeah, so I'm going Kyle Pitts, and I also like Jonnu Smith. I think that's a pretty deep room there. I think Kyle Pitts has he could be a top tier tight end in this league if he's used right. So I'd go Kyle Pitts 1. Falcons 1. I honestly, I'm going to go Carolina 2. I'm not a big Jawan Johnson guy, and I hate Taysom Hill. I can't stand him. So for that merely fact, I'm going with Carolina 2. So there's some bias there. And then I'm going to go Saints 3, and then Bucks. I don't even know who K. Otten is or Oten is. I don't know these other 2 guys.
Payne Durham. We talked about Payne Durham through the draft process.
Did we?
Yeah.
And I do kind of like Foster Moreau. So that, I guess the Saints do. Foster Moreau is a sleeper, and I feel like, and he's got a great story, but I thought he had some flashes with Las Vegas as well. But that's how I'd rank him. I go Falcons 1, Panthers 2, Saints 3, and Bucks 4. Bryson, what do you got for tight end rankings in the South?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be biased on this one. I think I'm going to take Carolina's group as a whole over any of these other ones in the South at this point. I don't think Kyle Pitts has shown anything up to this point that warranted that high of a pick in the draft that he was. I do like Jonnu Smith. So that group is probably number 2 just behind Carolina. And I'm sure Falcons fans would easily take their group over ours, but I really like Hayden Hurst a lot. I like the attitude that he brings. I like the blocking ability. I like the catching ability. I like everything about Hayden Hurst. His story as well. I'm a big Tommy Tremble fan. He finally has a quarterback now, so I think he's going to have a really good season. And then Ian Thomas, one of the best blocking tight ends in the league, not that great at catching the ball or running with the ball, but still a great blocker. So I'm going to go Carolina 1, Falcons 2, Saints 3, because I do like Juwan Johnson. I think that he's a legitimate receiving threat at tight end, and then the Bucks at 4.
Ricky, just curious because we haven't had you on this podcast yet. What's your thoughts on Tommy Tremble? I'm just not sold on him right now. I'm just curious what you think of him.
I'm a Tommy Tremble fan, and I'm a Tommy Tremble fan for the reason of I don't think he's gotten any NFL coaching, as he said himself. And his skill set, if you look at him, we talk about Ian Thomas being such a terrific blocker, right? Like one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. Tommy Tremble has just as high of blocking grades. He has really good usage, his versatility, being able to line up back in the H-back, being able to even run. We saw a couple of jet sweeps, and that's in a Ben McAdoo offense last year. I think that where I lean with the tight end group, and Tommy Tremble plays a big part in that, is if any of these groups were with the Panthers coaching staff, I would probably lean pretty close to that group because of this coaching staff and the way that they're going to use the tight end. Hayden Hurst, though, stands out because of his drop percentage. He does not drop the football. That dude is a security blanket, which is what you want from the tight end. You want that to be your safety valve, but he can extend vertically a little bit. Tommy Tremble, I think, is going to make a step. I think he's going to take a little bit of a leap this year, and it's going to be because of again, with the scheming of this offense, they want to stay multiple. They're going to want to have 12 personnel. At times, they're even going to have 3 tight ends on the field at the same time. Frank Reich historically has had the highest usage rate of 3 tight ends in the NFL. So I think that when you look at that group and staying multiple in the amount of times that they're going to be getting snaps, you're going to see more production. 2, I would probably go – I'm going to go Atlanta just because of Kyle Pitt's ability, and Jonnu Smith. I think that if he can stay healthy, he's a really nice 2 option. Then I go Saints. Then I go Tampa. What I will say about Tampa is it's unfair to have to judge these position and skill players because I have zero faith in their offensive play calling and in their signal caller at quarterback. And it just really sucks to have to sit here and try to evaluate Cade Otton, who I do know a little bit about. I'm pretty sure he's a second-year guy out of Tennessee, the University of Tennessee. He's an okay player. I mean, he's a tall shit brick house kind of guy. You know what I mean? I don't know if that means that his hands are also made of bricks, and that's going to be something that I guess we'll learn this season. But yeah, dude, it's Carolina, Falcons, Saints, Bucks for me.
All right, let's end on the offensive line here. Let me pull this up. And we will give our takes. And this time we'll start with Bryson on this.
I'll just rank them. I won't talk this time. I can get mouthy, man. My wife tells me that all the time.
Hey, dude, we love the input, man. So
hope you like the right guard spot for Carolina. But yeah, let's go.
That's awesome. All right, so yeah, real quick, I'm gonna go Saints 1. I don't know about Trevor Penning. I believe he suffered an injury last year, but as a whole, that group is very good in New Orleans, and they have been for a while. Ramczyk is one of the best tackles in the league. Saints 1, Carolina 2, based off of last season, not based off of week 1 in the preseason. Iquanu is a up-and-coming left tackle, as we all know. And when healthy, this offensive line was top 5, top 10 in the league grade-wise. And then 3, I would go Bucks, Jensen. That Tristan Wirfs offensive line has been good for a while. Don't know a whole lot about Matt Feeler or Mach, but yeah, those 2 guys stick out to me, so I'd put them at 3, then the Falcons at 4.
Yeah, I'll go next here quickly. I thought Trevor Penning, he had some good plays against the Chiefs. He was bullying some guys in that game this past Sunday. I would go with them, number 1. I just think across the board, they're stacked on the offensive line. I'd go 2, Carolina as well. I think they'll figure out that right guard spot here quickly. And I think they just are a little bit better than the Bucks and the Falcons. I like the Bucks at 3. I really like Ryan Jensen, like Luke Gadeke. I covered him back up in Wisconsin. He played. And I believe he was at North Dakota State, and I like him as well. And then I feel like, again, Falcons are last in almost every one of these categories. But they might have some guys on defense. We'll cover that next week, but I would put them at 4.
They don't.
Ricky, what do you got for the O-line?
Yeah, I'll definitely go Saints first. And really, I love Ramchick and Penning. They're great bookends on the side, but I love their guards, man. I love Andrews Pete kicking into that interior, and then Cesar Ruiz, kid out of Michigan. I thought that he's a really good ball player. I'll go Carolina second. I do think that once Corbett comes back and you pencil him in and that's the starting 5 there, love it. I think that that's a really good group that has the potential to grow throughout the season. I'll actually go Falcons at 3 over the Bucks, just to throw a little twist in here. I'm a Chris Lindstrom fan. I really liked him coming out of Boston College. Caleb McGarry's got a little bit of game to him. Jake Matthews. My hang up with the Bucks is after Tristan Wirfs, I don't know that they have enough proven commodities there. Cody Mock, I think, has a lot of potential. That's the rookie, right, out of North Dakota State. I think that he's got some potential. Right. I just don't, and Luke as well. I guess he's a solid player, but I don't know that much about him. And from an experience standpoint, I still think he's a little bit light. So I'm gonna just throw some shit against the wall here, and I'm gonna go Saints, Panthers, Falcons, Bucks. And also,
Fair
their
enough.
quarterback is going to make their offensive line look bad, too, because they're going to hold on to the ball and do all kinds of stupid shit.
Well, let's wrap up with this. Let's talk about it because it's still letting me record, so I'm going to go with it. Let's talk about the preseason game on Friday night. They're going up to the Meadowlands. They're going to be playing the Giants, go from the Jets to the Giants. Don't know how that's stacked up, but that's what's going to happen. Let's talk about that. What are you guys looking forward to? Anything players you're keying in on? Any position groups you're looking forward to? What do you want to see out of Bryce Young? How long do you want to see him play? That type of thing. Bryson, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I would like to see him play a little bit more than he did this past week, just to kind of continue to build on and just selfishly see him more and build on what he showed this past week with his progressions and getting the ball out quick and just making all the right decisions. That he did make. The thing I'm going to be watching for the most is that offensive line to bounce back because they're going to be going against another very good defensive line in New York, defensive line that has Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, and Kayvon Thibodeau. It's not a walk in the park. I mean, they got defensive lines in New York apparently. So I'm going to be looking for the offensive line to take personal this past week and everything that everybody's been talking about them because, again, this is a group that has the ability to do that and set the tone and punch other teams in the mouth and do what they need to do to set that tone on the field. So I'm going to be looking specifically at that. And, this Giants team is a team that Carolina has struggled with for the past couple of seasons. Every year it seems like we play the Giants and we think we're going to go beat the Giants in the Meadowlands, or they come to Carolina, we think we're going to beat them, and they embarrass us. I mean, this past couple of seasons, I think this past year, wasn't that the game that, it was almost, we score close to 0 points versus the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
It was a total embarrassment. So I want to see them take that personal. I want to see the offensive line take personal this past week. And I want to see Bryce Young probably play, I would say 2 or 3 drives would be all right with me.
Ricky?
Yeah, I'm definitely keyed in on that offensive line. That's got to be the number one thing that any fan is watching for. And I think that Bryson said it the right way, that I want to see him take it personally. I want to see a little bit of like accountability and pride coming out of these players on the offensive line. I don't care if they play 14 snaps or if they play 25 or if they play 40. I want to see the same energy every single snap. And I want that energy to be volatile, right? I want them to feel a little bit of not shame. I'm not like Game of Thrones episode stoning them or anything like that. But I do want them to have a little bit of personal drive here. And I think they will, especially Icky. I think that you're going to see a nice game out of Icky. I also think that I'm looking for our defensive line against their offensive line. Andrew Thomas is a really good offensive tackle. I don't know if he'll play. That's the really hard part about previewing some of these preseason things is you just don't know when guys are going to be held out and stuff like that. I would love to see us open up the offense a little bit. Not all the way. I really don't want them to show us all of the goods. I would like it to be kind of like a cabaret thing as opposed to a strip club, right? Like show me something that gets me intrigued, but don't show me too much. So that's the way that I would look at the offense.
Perfect way to put it.
Yeah, look, I'm just a good Southern Christian, like that's the way that my mind functions. But no, I do want to see a couple of wrinkles. I'd like to see Laviska used a couple of different ways as opposed to just the one route on the outside where he really doesn't have a whole lot of business getting that kind of action. Running game, I'm not really that concerned about. You're not going to see a lot of it, especially until that offensive line kind of figures their stuff out. I would just really like to watch the trench play, I think, because I think that's where you're going to get some of the reads on what the position battles are going on right now on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to reiterate a lot of what you guys mentioned. Offensive line is the biggest thing for me. They got to bounce back. I'd like to see Bryce Young play, I would say almost a quarter and a half, maybe a little bit more. I believe he was into the second quarter in this first game, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if they did something different and said, like, they want him to play until the offense can accumulate 100 total yards with him under center? Like just say, hey, if that's 2 drives, because you can go out there and do something impressive, let's do 2 drives. But if it takes him 6 drives to do 100 yards, I mean, at some point, man, let's put some shit together, right?
Yeah. I mean, I just get concerned with them doing this rotation at right guard of, putting them in harm's way out there as well.
Totally.
But I would like to see him a couple more drives. Jamie Robinson, guy's got to show up this game. You got to have a bounce back. Again, he's a rookie, but I'd like to see something there as well. But that's probably the biggest thing. And Blackshear, too. I feel like Spencer Brown got a lot of time this last game. I'd like to see Blackshear a lot more in the backfield and is splitting some of those carries as well. So, and then maybe some rotation on the returners. I know Blackshear looked like he was majority of it this past game. Maybe get Shy involved a little bit. I like to see Saunders. I'm always pulling for him. I'd like to see him get some time too as well. But that's the biggest thing. And they got a big test. If the Giants starting D-line is playing, which I don't know if they will, but that is going to be another tough road for them going from the Jets to the Giants. So they got a tough task at hand on Friday night. I think it's 7:00 kickoff, maybe.
I believe
I got that right. So look forward to that. But Ricky, we just want to thank you again for coming on. We do appreciate. I know it's an hour long here, but you had a lot of good insight. And again, we like what you're. I mean, you were at majority. Were you at all the training camp practices?
No, I wasn't able to do a lot of during the week things. I was there for the joint practices. I was there for the back together Saturday. And I did the fan fest and stuff like that here in Charlotte.
Yeah.
But no, I wasn't able to get to Spartanburg that much. Unfortunately, I have one of those regular jobs too,
I got you. But we appreciate your insight on Twitter. You got a lot of good takes on there. So we just want to thank you. Give him a follow. It's Ricky Raines. Also check out their podcast, Kitty Lit Podcast and Cat Crave. You guys do a lot of good stuff with them as well. And I know we've had
guests. Can I
guests
plug one last thing too that I would love people to take a look at? We had DJ Chark's sister on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and they run a sports performance academy out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Her a DJ. It's called Chark's Sports Performance Academy, and they're running an initiative for the month of August that is called Chark Ups, where it's a checking in. They work with youth age 8 to 18, and they're checking in on the mental health aspect as well as the physical health, and they're trying to get kids more comfortable with the being able to be vulnerable and speak to people about things that are happening and what you're uncomfortable with, anything like that. So they're doing this initiative. They're raffling off tickets to the Carolina Panthers New Orleans Saints game down in New Orleans, December. I am also doing a separate raffle on my Twitter page. If you follow me and you send me proof of you buying one ticket, even tickets are $10, and you send me proof of that. If I get 25 tickets bought by my followers, I will raffle off an NFL jersey of your choice. Whoever wins, we will pick it live on the podcast. You get to pick whichever jersey you want. I will send it to you, no cost. So you get a chance to win tickets to a Saints-Panthers game in New Orleans, plus a chance to win an NFL jersey, all for $10. And it's a great initiative. Dietrich's doing really good work down there. She's an awesome person. The Chark family has an incredible story of resiliency. Check it out. Give their website a look. It's Chark, as a DJ Chark, SSPA.com. Go on there, buy a ticket, show me the proof. Get yourself a jersey, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
again, Ricky, thank you so much for coming on. We do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, we just want to thank Ricky again for coming on to the podcast. A lot of good insight from him. Don't forget to give him a follow. It's Ricky Raines on Twitter. He was speaking about his giveaway. Don't forget, we do have a jersey giveaway. When this drops tomorrow, you're going to only have 1 day left. We will be picking the winner on Thursday for a J.C. Horn Black Panthers jersey. We'll pick someone at random. You have to be subscribed to our YouTube channel. That's Panthers on Tap. Also follow us on Twitter and retweet the post. You can find it on there. And we just want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Panthers on Tap podcast. You can catch all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap for all your analysis and breaking news. And as always,